Cool. Well, meeting three, March 24, Mammoth Film Group. Let's maybe just go around and then quick updates. I think this is where we can maybe talk about what we thought of the Oscars because that kind of was a thing that happened.
Did
Oh
happen.
yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I was. I feel like a lot of my friends have been divided on like there's like the one camp that's like everything everywhere deserved all the accolades that it got, and then there's the other camp that was like I feel like this movie was overrated. I think it was awarded more things than it should have been. Um, yeah, so I don't know if like you guys not just that in specific, but any just general thoughts on the Oscars or updates. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean
I think
it's been about a
everything
month.
everywhere is definitely the place to start.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I mean, like I loved it. I saw it 3 times in theaters when it came out over like the first maybe 4 months that it was out.
Yeah,
Um, Loved it, connected with it, could see why I was like, and like liked it, but didn't expect at any moment until it was maybe well into the summer that like this movie was reaching like so many people in a way that I think was
yeah, yeah,
and kind of unprecedented for a movie like that, and then also
yeah,
like just in a way I wasn't expecting. And so the fact that they made it all the way to the Oscars and kind of cleaned house the way they did, it's like it's shocking. And I was really excited. I mean, I remember I watched it with my family, and we were all like cheering when Kike Kwan won and when
yeah,
she
yeah,
won their awards. We were like, oh, let's go, like
yeah,
Asian people in the streets flipping cars and shit. Like,
yeah.
um, I definitely, I would have loved some more love for Tar. I would have loved some more love
Mm,
for Banshees. I would have loved any
right,
love for Nope.
right,
Things like
right.
this.
Yeah. Nope,
But
not being it was
I
crazy.
still like love that we live in a timeline where something like this can happen for a movie like Everything Everywhere. I think that's like exciting to me still, even if I don't like agree necessarily. There are a couple like I would have definitely given screenplay away to someone else. I probably would
Mm,
have given best director away to someone else.
mm,
I would have given supporting actress away to someone else. Um, but I don't know. Yeah, I feel good about it overall. I mean, the other
yeah,
thing was that like there was so much love for this movie, and then kind of in the back end towards like the end of the year into award season and stuff, there was this like kind of outpouring of contrarian hate for the movie as
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think there
Not to
was
say
a
that it's like disqualified or unjustified for being contrarian, but
right.
it always did feel like if this movie wasn't as hadn't been hit it as big as it did, I don't think we would have been having a conversation like that.
Yeah,
We've been heavily debating its merits in such a way.
yeah,
It's always
uh,
interesting to see how like what a year of discourse can do.
yeah. And there's always that like distinct point in like a film's journey that like it goes from like, oh, have you seen that movie
Mm-hmm.
to like, oh, you haven't seen it yet. And I think
Mm-hmm.
this movie also kind of like it went through that cycle too, right? Because I remember when I was watching it for the first time, it was like, oh, like have you seen that? But then I think now it's kind of like at a point where like people are like, oh, you haven't seen that movie yet. Like you're kind of the odd one out. So
Mm-hmm.
like I do think like that already creates kind of that contrarian camp of like those that haven't watched the film or like once it hits that like mainstream threshold, it sort of reverts to this like this bifurcation of like the in group and the out group kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, even at my work too, I think like everything everywhere all at once, like that title itself is becoming used as like a pop culture reference. Just people like will talk about it as like a like they'll just talk about it in like everyday language.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think I also think that like it was I guess I don't know. I think I was like just more focused on kind of the emotional impact the movie had on me when I watched it. But the more I thought about it, it was like what a what a like Herculean endeavor to like make a film like this, you know? Like I just think about how much blood, sweat, and tears must have went into like writing this,
Mm-hmm.
choreographing it, editing it, you know? Uh, so I thought it was like, yeah, at least for the best picture, like I feel like it's well deserved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that best picture felt really good aside from what did the producer say by accident? That no person is more important than profits.
Mm.
I think he like misspoke, but that was really funny.
That was funny. That was funny.
I haven't seen that part, but that sounds funny.
Uh,
Um, any thoughts, Youngwang, or just not just about Oscars, but just in general, any kind of whatever things you want to say?
Uh, I mean, uh, me personally, I thought it was gonna sweep, and it
Mm.
swept. So,
Oh.
I feel good about the prediction, at least.
Mhm.
I mean, I like the movie, I- and I, and that sort of wave of contrarianism at the end, which is not really based on any sort of uh like a personal reaction to the film. It felt like it was definitely there, and I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at the list of Best Picture winners for the past and the nominations for the past like 20 years, and I gotta say this is not like if at this point in time if someone treats like the Oscars with like any sort of like authority, I don't know what to tell them. I feel like they have some things they have to deal with themselves. So some
you
things they
got
need to
personal issues to
reconsider.
solve, buddy.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it is a little bit annoying when people like constantly reveal how captive they are
Yeah.
and how captive the discourse about representation is, because every time it's about like
Yeah.
legitimizing these award ceremonies and sort of implicitly giving them the authority to like be the canvas on which people are represented or not, you
Hmm.
know? And it's like somehow representation matters in terms of, oh, can we become, awarded by these institutions? And I think that is such a I don't know that is such an anti-authorian way to disguise a real submission to existing authority, you know, and
Mm.
and you know I can't say that sort of discourse didn't happen this year, but all in all, I am happy. I am happy for the film. Uh, I don't know why Jamie Lee Curtis won
I
supporting
know that
actress.
was so weird. It was so weird. We were like cheering and cheering and supporting actor, and then they went straight into supporting actress, and she won. We were like, "Wait, what?" And we all like went quiet. We're like, "Wait, what's going on?"
She was the
Yeah.
daughter, right? The daughter she wanted. Jamie Lee Curtis, that's the daughter of the.
Stephanie Shu. Jamie Lee Curtis is the tax agent.
She won.
She
So
won.
Yeah.
I thought the daughter did a pretty good job, but then
Yeah, I thought she was great.
yeah, but interesting. Maybe they thought her like sausage hand acting was like
I
good. I don't
guess.
know. But
There's speculation that it was like kind of a lifetime award for all her like horror genre work and this kind of
interesting.
thing and being like a, kind of cult fixture that never was like decorated or this kind of
Hmm,
thing. But it's so like,
that is
I mean,
interesting.
it's like they're not even trying to be like discreet about it anymore with the Oscars. That's the other
Mhm.
thing. I feel like,
Uh,
it's kind of there's a lot that like I don't know, you can kind of see where all these motivations for these votes go. It's
uh-huh.
very
Yeah.
clear to me.
I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
they're too busy awarding all these. They're giving out all these like lifetime career awards, and
Mm,
they're creating, to compensate for the awards they were not given in their prime. And now
Yeah.
they're creating new actors who are not being awarded for performances in their prime. So everyone
It's
is
just
getting like a 10 to 20 year delay.
yeah. Infinite backlog, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Um, any other kind of just updates or film movie
Mm.
things? The Roxy Theater in San Francisco was doing a Vin Vendors retrospective.
Oh, nice.
So
Mhm.
we played Paris, Texas, and I invited like two of my friends to go watch it with me. Um, man, I
That's
just think
right.
like I think it is such a radically different experience to watch a film in a theater with like
Yeah.
60 other people looking at the same screen as you. Um,
Movie like that too.
yeah,
Mhm.
and it's just kind of I mean, I watched the like my like context in watching that film has always just been in my room by myself, like on a screen. But kind of, I don't know, it really did feel like the cinema going experiences it is such a different like tradition of viewing a film that like emphasizes that communal aspect
Mhm.
about film watching that I think you sometimes forget. So yeah, I love rewatching it with friends and with strangers who like for that 2 hours and 30 minutes are kind of like in the same boat as you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, I
That's
guess
great.
that was
I
like a
love
nice,
that.
yeah, good. Yeah, and I watched that like 2 days after I found out I got accepted. So it kind of felt a little like I was like, oh, like man.
Yeah, like a victory lap.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I was like rewarding myself after like some sort of yeah, like race that I did.
Mm,
Mhm.
well, you earned it.
Yeah.
Um, I was gonna say, did I tell you guys about my experience with Avatar 2 last time we met? Because that was like the most recent like power of cinema experience I had because I realized maybe about an hour into it, I went and saw it in the theater on New Year's Eve in Hong Kong with my parents, and
Oh.
about an hour into the movie, I realized I hadn't seen the first movie since I was maybe 12 and in the theater.
Mhm.
And so my entire experience of the entire Avatar universe and of the planet Pandora exists purely in the theater as this kind of like transporting dream I've had once every decade, you know? And
Mm.
like it was like going into that theater and going in Avatar 2 was like getting in a little spaceship and going somewhere with a random group of people and touching back down in this place that like you remember in your dreams or something, but like that you got to re-enter or something like this.
Right.
It's amazing. And that like really, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like this place doesn't exist outside of this little like box, this black box we're in, you know?
That's so
Would
good.
highly recommend that, relegating a movie or, you know, kind of world to the theater. So it's very interesting.
It's like very self-contained, but because
Mhm.
of that self-containment, it feels
Feels
almost like
real, it feels precious, it feels
yeah,
immediate, you know, in some kind of material way as opposed to like where it can be accessed anywhere on your
true,
TV
true.
or laptop.
It's kind of like I watched on the airplane right back the menu. Have you heard of the menu?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
I watched that. I thought it was like it wasn't like I wasn't like blown away by it, but I still
yeah.
I like the concept of it. But like Nicholas Holt, the main character's like sort of sin was the fact that he just took all the photos and would just post all the fine dining photos on Instagram, like social media, or whatever. And then I think like the chef was like telling him like, hey, it's because of people like you that like art is no longer mysterious.
Mhm.
And I think there is such to be said about like how the self-containment of art in itself could make it that much more precious and I guess endearing in a sense that like
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah. Like it wouldn't make sense if like you could go to Disneyland every single day. Then it's no longer like
Right.
the
The
happiest place
magic
on
is
earth.
lost, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That magic doesn't leave Disneyland.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's gotta be in Anaheim. Yeah.
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah,
super
for
cool.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Um,
anything from Yonggwang at all?
yeah.
Or
I mean, Andrew, when was it that we was it the pod when Jackson was not on that I talked about Avatar 2? Was that
yeah. That was like
okay?
I
Oh, I
think that
show up
was
late that day.
yeah, yeah. I think that might have been like last one, probably. Yeah, our last meeting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, Avatar 2.
Mhm.
Uh,
I gotta watch
it's
Avatar too.
it's so good, man.
So
Yeah.
sick.
It's so good, man. I
It's
mean,
so lit.
yeah. I mean, yeah, highly recommend you book
Hmm.
your next ticket to Pandora
Hmm.
Yeah,
as fast as possible.
let
Um,
me see if they're playing Avatar 2.
I'm pretty sure they are.
I'm pretty sure it
Oh,
is. Yeah, it's still
Yeah,
going
I
strong.
live like 10 minutes away from here. So
Oh yeah, you got
maybe
it.
okay.
yeah. And well,
Andrew, go watch Avatar 2.
I've really just been like attending two retrospectives near me lately. There was the Ho Shen retrospective that
Oh
we were
yeah.
talking about. Um, but then turns out there was also a Claire Denis retrospective, and yeah, good stuff, great
Yeah.
stuff, even.
Nice. What'd
Yeah.
you go see? Or you been seeing a lot of stuff?
Oh yeah. It's like Chocolat.
Mm.
Trouble
Mm.
Every Day, White Material, 35 Shots of Rum,
So good.
and Beau Travail.
Nice. Wow.
Um,
Nice.
Yeah,
You've been
it
going
was
through it.
very comprehensive.
I've been wanting to watch Chocolat because one of my friends recommended it to me, but I haven't got around it.
Mhm.
Um, we'll soon though. Yeah.
That and White Material are very good. Like
What
Mm, I
they're
have to watch
almost
the
like
material.
prequel and sequel.
what is it?
White Material.
White. Hmm, interesting. All right. Well, keep those
Hmm.
in mind.
Oh, I love Isabelle Huppert, of course.
Yeah,
Mm.
she's queen of
The
not just French
world.
cinema. Yeah, just
Queen
just
of
just
the
in
World.
general. Yeah, yeah. Do you guys remember like your first Isabelle Huppert movie? I remember mine. I don't know why, but
I don't know.
I think
What's yours?
mine was I think the English title was called Things to Come or like yeah, Things to Come. Yeah,
Oh.
it was this movie. I watched that for the first time.
Mm,
And then I think after that I watched Amour by Michael
Michael Haneke.
Haneke
Yeah.
Mhm.
and then the piano teacher. I think that was
Mhm.
by I forgot who the piano teacher's by. And then she was in like a Hong Sang-soo film, so I was like, and I think
Yeah,
like that,
Claire's camera, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Claire's
I think that
Camera,
was the
and
one I've seen.
then she was in I think she was in another country. That's another one too.
Oh, really?
Um, but yeah, I think like there is that certain point where like you get hooked on like an actress or an actor, so you just kind of start following their entire like filmography.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been
Um,
on a Robert De Niro kick here this past
Oh
week.
yeah.
right, yeah, yeah. With that being said, I think that would be a good transition to talking about um
Rupert.
Rupert Pupkin. Dude, what a transformation of like going from Raging Bull
Yeah, right.
to
He's so
to
like
Rupert Pupkin.
unrecognizable.
I think it took me a second to realize that's Robert De Niro. I was like, oh, like I thought he was gonna play somebody else, and then I like looked at him. I was like, oh, that is Robert De
That's
Niro.
him.
Yeah,
He's like this little goofy guy.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think. I mean, I'll start off like really gently, and then I'll just kind of open it up. I never watched a film where like I like hated and loved the main character so much. Like I genuinely like was
he's
so
so annoying.
annoyed by Rupert Pupkin, but
He's
like
so
I
frustrating.
yeah, I was so annoyed. I'm like, dude, I like want to. If I was like, how did Jerry have so much patience with this guy? Um, but then like you kind of soften up to him towards the end, you know.
I
Um,
think it's even the balance. I mean, it feels so much like the kind of arc of the story is this kind of Scorsese minded, like this is the shit people will do to make it big. Like this is the content brain that will actually work out for you if you kidnap a show host and then like make a big news out of it. There's no bad press, whatever, whatever. And it's kind of very like there's no sympathy. I feel like on there's less sympathy for Rupert. I feel like on the direction, screenwriting end of it, but then De Niro endears him so much, like as in
right.
the performance. I
Yeah.
feel like
Mhm.
there's so much like kind of underneath where like he has this like really blind confidence, but he also has like this kind of it's not even I can't think of a moment before that really final shot of his set that he does on the TV and when he watches it back in the bar, but there's
Mhm.
like that like reveals kind of like oh he's like father was a drunk and like he had all this kind of like he was bullied growing up and all this kind of thing, but like De Niro does something to make that sadness or that kind of pain that Rupert's trying to channel into his work like tangible kind of throughout, and I feel like that endears you to him without even kind of realizing what exactly is going on there until the kind of end and he kind of
Yeah.
lays himself bare a little bit on TV and this kind of thing. You're like whoa, like
Yeah. And I think
huh.
and I feel like that emotional kind of like release feels a lot stronger because the audience is just in the dark the entire time about like Rupert's backstory. We just kind of get who he is in that 1 hour and 40 minutes, which is just this frankly like annoying, obnoxious,
A little
socially inept,
sociopathic.
Yeah,
sociopathic,
yeah, yeah.
creepy guy. But then like I don't know, I feel like I also think this is like a great direction by Scorsese where it's like it's kind of like this idea of like how do we like humanize and tell the story of Rupert without being like histrionic without being like hysterical about it. And the way of like using like a comedy skit as like but then it's not really even like it's like a screen within a screen, right? Like so I feel like as audience we're like twice removed from really like the emotion that Rupert is projecting is like projected through beyond one layer of screen and then onto us.
Mm,
So it's kind of I don't know. I feel like it's like there was a little bit of like it is I think it feels all the more emotional because it's as though like the emotions were like a little bit muted because of the structure of that scene where it's like,
mm.
you know,
This
technically
is where like
Rupert,
he's imagining himself on Jerry Lewis and like talking to him and being his buddy.
yeah, and technically like Rupert's not really addressing the audience either, right? It's he's
Mm-hmm.
addressing the audience of the Jerry Lewis show. And
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
we are seeing Rupert addressing that audience as audience members.
Yeah,
Um, So
yeah.
I'm curious. I like that, the doubling.
mm,
Like there could have been very it, there could have been very much more indulgent ways to for example like for Rupert could have that the whole monologue at the end could have been direct address to the audience, which would have I think less diminished the power of the scene in the movie as a whole like significantly. I, and just to jump off that, I think a huge strength of this film is that it does the irony is not too sharp in the sense that it's not like he's so shallow and annoying in the surface, but
yeah.
he's so profoundly broken and miserable
Yeah,
deep down
yeah.
inside, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
not that he's like he's so much of a social climber and a striver on the surface, and he's actually you know just a terribly unfunny person. His routine is actually pretty okay.
Pretty
Like,
good.
yeah,
I,
it's
Like,
pretty
I,
good.
I
He has
think
good jokes.
that's where I also was like, wait, you kind of expect it to be like a,
like trash, right?
but I'm like,
Yeah,
wait, like pretty good. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
I mean, I
there
think we
are
have that, right? And I think that's even the heart of that for me
uh-huh.
was like the heart of the statement is that like a lot of people, if given a 10 minutes on the Jerry Lewis show, would do a great job and would like make this a huge opportunity for themselves, right?
Right,
But only
right,
like
right, right.
a real content brain, who knows how to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
there and create that opportunity for himself, this kind of like sociopathic tendency is the person who will like make it in that world, I feel like is kind of part of the comment.
yeah, 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 yeah. And a big part of the I think the humanizing touch is ultimately the light touch. Um,
Mm,
like he like Rupert by the end he's annoying in a very pedestrian way. He's funny in a very pedestrian way. You know, he's suffering in a very pedestrian way. Like none of this is there are like I think there's big there are magisterial touches. I think that shot of him standing before the black and white the wall, the black and white photo, wall size black and white
Mm,
photo of the
yeah, yeah,
the
crowd,
yeah.
and like
audience,
yeah, that
yeah.
leads you to believe that like it's going towards someplace much more like I don't want to say ambitious because I think that this movie is ambitious on its own, but the same direction as Taxi Driver or like Raging Bull, where there is somewhat of a mythic proportion to the characters. You know,
Hmm.
like this is like this character is sort of encompasses like almost like a moment in time, maybe across
Right,
all time, men across all time. Whereas
right.
Rupert, he's a much smaller character in a much smaller movie, and I think the movie and the character are so much stronger for that. Um, and then when watching this movie, like really, I don't know, the joke, like this is the thing I think the Joker missed. Like the Joker is too much, too like it expands too much from this. Like
Mhm.
he's joke, like that movie has to be a statement. That movie has to be an iconic movie poster. That movie has to be
Right. It's
like,
doing too much like, hey, look at
yeah,
this,
yeah,
how
yeah,
clever
yeah.
this is, right?
And
Like,
you, what if the clown was serious? You know, like.
uh,
Where yeah, and whereas that contrast is so much more expertly muted here.
De
Yeah, I think
Niro's in Joker too, right? That's like, do you think they're calling back to this that way?
Oh
Or
yeah, yeah, yeah,
oh,
yeah.
for sure, right?
He's in Jerry Lewis's role, right? In Joker.
Yeah, he's the Jerry Lewis guy in that.
Yeah, and Jerry Lewis in that movie gets killed, whereas here, you know,
It's like way
nothing
more
happens.
delicate,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Instead,
yeah,
he goes and
yeah,
has this hilarious interaction with Masha,
Yeah.
who we
yeah,
haven't even talked
True.
about yet.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Whoever plays Masha in that movie is a
Oh
force.
my God,
She's
yeah.
amazing. She was cracking me up and like scaring me at the same time. And like,
She was also annoying too. Like I feel like
yeah.
everybody in this movie was like, and I don't. I think I definitely do echo from what Young Guang said, which is like this like just the fact that there is no like um kind of this like turn of event or like there's nothing that's like that builds up and then kind of explodes at some sort of like climax. It like I think for me, I was expecting there to be some kind of dramatic turn once like Rupert is on the show and then like there's this thing. But it's like it's weird in the fact that it was just a very normal, well thought out, pretty like average skit that he does. He
Mhm.
watches it and then he gets arrested. And there's no like and I don't know, maybe that's kind of like the um it kind of makes me feel like waiting for Godot, where like we're like waiting for
Mhm.
some sort of like
Mm,
dramatic turn or some sort of dramatic like savior or like some messianic force to like come down and then like save Rupert, but he just does a skit, gets arrested, and then I'm sure Jerry Lewis will go back to his show.
Yeah.
Just how like insignificant everything is at the end was
Mhm.
kind of like I think that's kind of what makes it linger, at least for me, a lot more.
mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's not that it's like neat, but it's not like super neat. Especially there's like this last shot of just him on stage and he's not like with Rita and there's not like this kind of grand satisfaction or kind of conclusion to it. It's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
and then he was famous and like what do
Right,
you
right.
think of that, And it's like
Yeah.
um
Um, I don't know if you felt this, Jackson, but like,
mm,
so the while I was watching it, I was drawing like not like direct comparisons, but like in the back of my mind, I kept thinking of the network. But like,
of network.
yeah, yeah. Was that
Yeah.
connection like ever something that came to mind for you or
Totally.
yeah, yeah.
Totally. I think I was almost gonna say this feels like Scorsese's network, like
Mm,
versus Lumet's. Um, I mean, like Rupert has this same kind of inscrutable insanity that Howard Beale does a little bit, or that like
right.
some of these other guys all do. And like I like this because if it's a little more stripped down, it's less like of a big, like all these moving parts, and it's more just like the kind of I mean, you're so deep in Rupert's
Yeah.
experience too, which is I think the thing that I love that set this apart from Network for me is how like kind of unreliable a lot of these moments are, how some of this is just straight up a dream and kind of how
Yeah.
seriously um we dip in and out of that like kind of fantasy of his. That's
Hmm.
another
Mhm.
testament to Thelma again. Like Thelma just went crazy in this era, I think.
Hmm.
Between Raging Bull and this and like the flow of reality or the kind of unreality of Rupert's mind is so it's
Right.
so fun. It's so like engaging to live in.
Yeah.
It did feel a lot like maybe like Robert De Niro's acting and there's this general kind of general atmosphere and the tone of the film was like kind of like Charlie Chaplin, right? There's a
Mm,
very like Chaplin-esque humor, his sense of like slapstick, sense of like, like the tone never diving into this like deep emotional burn or whatever. It just generally keeps it light the whole time. And I mean, I also really like films by Chaplin.
mm,
And I think I saw myself yeah, making comparisons to like City Lights or like
yeah.
modern times as I was watching this movie too. Because at the end
Chaplin
of
will
the day,
find
it's like,
that kind of like heartfelt little nugget in the end too.
yeah, because at the
Like
end of the day, like he also just wants to woo like that was it Rita? Like
Rita.
Rita?
Mhm.
This whole film like could be read as like a romance film, right? Like he wants to impress a girl. Like that's what it is at the end.
Who
Yeah.
he had a crush
Mhm.
on like since he was a kid, right? Like since school,
Yeah.
whatever, and like
Uh,
uh
and like he's like like the whole thing was like he wanted to get on the show to like show to Rita that like like he was able to make it. Yeah,
He was a man of value.
it's a king of comedy.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's that line? I actually like think I was like, was it better to be king for a night than a
Hmm.
schmuck for a lifetime? It was so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
He
there's
could
a
have
good.
said again, like he could have like that could have really that line could have been really a, a real thudding statement by the end. It's like, oh, isn't it great to be the king of comedy for a night than to be a loser for your entire lifetime? No, but it's just a statement he says. He himself doesn't read too much into that statement. You know,
right, right.
he genuinely wants this minute of fame. He doesn't really seem to have a lot of regrets. He's not reflective like that. The movie intentionally is not reflective like that.
Mhm.
If one does that, that's really on the reader, I suppose. Um, and I just think Scorsese is very that this and After Hours. He's
Yeah.
very good when he makes seemingly unreflective movies. After
Right.
Hours, Goodfellas, Wolf of Wall Street, Casino, like
Hmm.
unreflective movies full of unreflective characters, who live their entire lives without any sort of moral or spiritual epiphany. He's like that's his forte. Like that's what this filmography is all about, I
Hmm.
think.
Yeah,
And if anything, like things like Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, they're the real sort of
Yeah.
yeah,
they're the weird ones out. Like though those characters don't feel at home
yeah,
in Scorsese world.
yeah.
Um,
It's like I think the one dimensionality of this film is what makes it almost feel kind of like tangible in like all different angles.
mhm,
And I think that's because of the fact that like I think it's this feeling of like how unreflective all the characters are. It's
mhm.
you're so painfully aware that this is like a movie. It's like a fake
Yeah,
reality.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but like that awareness, I think it gives us um I think it gives us more space to do reflection on behalf of these very like unreflective
Hmm.
people, you know?
Mhm, mhm.
And
Um,
to delight, even just in how
yeah,
horrible they are, right? And
Yeah,
like kind of
yeah.
all this like, not that it's
yeah,
a farce, but that it's just like constructed
uh,
to be compelling that way.
yeah,
It's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like listen to him shouting with Masha, like going back, like they bring out the worst in each other the whole time, and you're just like,
right.
oh
Mhm,
God.
Seriously. Yeah, I just think about like being like somebody who lives in New York in the 80s, going to like a date night and watching this movie together. I mean, it just sounds like such a good time if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Like this kind of sensibility that's like was very like, I don't know, commonplace in because I think now like I feel like modern cinema is very it's very reflective. It's
Mhm.
very aware of like the medium. It's very um at times very agenda driven and
Mhm.
I don't
Very
know.
reflexive, yeah.
Yeah,
But
and I feel like it's a breath of fresh air to come across a film that's just really like it's like show business. It's just like
Yeah.
for
mhm.
entertainment. It's to entertain and to delight, as you said. Yeah. Um, well,
Okay. This is like one of my favorite. This is quickly becoming my favorite kind of era of Scorsese. This like
mm,
early to mid 80s Raging
yeah,
Bull, After Hours, King of
right.
Comedy. That's like wow, bang, 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 one after
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
So good.
And it
Blunt
didn't really
instrument Scorsese.
and it didn't really feel like a typical, I guess I haven't seen too many of like his male tales, but like I think a lot of the like Scorsese like male characters like they kind of conjure up pity in viewers towards the end of it,
Mhm.
but I didn't feel pity towards Rupert. I mean, like rightfully so. Rupert he does well for himself towards the end, right? But
Mhm.
his kind of like delight in like his complete like utter like one dimensionalness throughout this
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
thing. He's like, it's like that's that one scene in the reception. She's like, "You can come back Monday." He's like, "Oh no, it's not a bother. I'll just stay here until like." It's like, dude, you're a dumbass, but I,
Like,
I
bro,
like you
take a
for that.
hint, please. I'm
Yeah,
begging you.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, let's do a hard turn and then maybe move over
Mm.
to a touch of sin, which is yeah, definitely on a different wavelength.
Different vibe.
Um,
Different country, different time.
for sure.
Uh,
Different country, different time, different director, different genre. But yeah, I personally really like this film. Would love to just kind of hear like
Mm.
maybe even from like Jackson, because like I remember a long time ago when we were watching Paris Jatem, you said you weren't a huge fan
Oh
of
yeah.
anthology films.
Yeah.
How did
Yeah.
how did this land with
This
you?
worked a lot better.
Mm,
I'll say for starters. I was gonna ask who I'm trying to remember who suggested this, and I was curious.
I
I was
did.
gonna ask how you came to this one because was it the anthology thing that drew you to it, or was it like the
No, I had a friend who like recommended me just like 8 films that she really enjoyed.
Mhm.
And one of
Mhm.
them was A Touch of Sin, and I was
Mhm.
oh like I've only really watched one film by Zhezhanka.
Yeah.
So and then I think for me I do like I think I if I had to choose I do enjoy anthology films. Um, and I thought this would be something that
Yeah.
we could all watch together. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of how
Well,
I
I mean,
came.
I did really like it. I think
Uh,
this worked for me as an anthology better than I think most other movies of this type that I've seen, and I think it was in large part because I think the thematic focus and the kind of energy coming from each of these little kind of vignettes is so consistent and it's so
mm,
kind of intentional and it's really well aligned. Um, I mean, it's not as intertwined as something like Pulp
yeah.
Fiction, but I kept thinking of Pulp Fiction the whole time I was
Mm,
watching it is just like these kind of I don't know, but it was like Pulp Fiction, but it was less like pulpy, like it was
right,
really
right, right.
human, it was really down to earth. It's like this kind of most down to earth, reflective, kind of like deeply considered meditation on violence and like what drives people to violence.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then will become at moments a Jia Zhangke movie where the people are just doing the coolest, like she pulls out the knife and it's like shoo,
Yeah, like
like this
wuxia
like
film. Yeah,
sickest action sequence you could have
yeah,
put in this
Mhm.
condemning violence or like questioning the like brutality of violence movie, or like that first skit where he goes around shooting people. Like those sequences where he shoots people, they're amazing. They're like, whoa,
yeah.
holy cow. They blow you away, but then you're also like, oh shit. Like
Blow you away.
like you feel
Yeah,
the intensity of the moment and the excitement of the moment, and then also the gravity afterwards, which I think is something very hard to balance in violent movies.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of
Mhm.
that feeling of hollowness of like once
Mhm.
the storm subsides and like you just see the I think it's the third skit where like she like pulls out the wuxia action and like just cuts up all the men who are like asking for a massage from her, and then she's just walking away from like the sauna. It's kind of like yeah, like it's like this feeling of like what comes after, like that
Mhm.
dread that kicks in. Um, yeah.
yeah.
What about you, Youngguang? Or
Uh, I I I I really like this film. I think I'm liking it more the more I think about it, and it's uh to jump on what Jackson was talking about, the violence in this film is so grisly. I
mm,
was not I was genuinely off put by like the first segment when you see like the guy holding up the shotgun at the accountant. He
Mhm.
pans, and then
She goes,
within the
"Whoa."
same frame, yeah. Within the same frame, he called the accountant for some reason calls the guy holding a gun at him a coward,
oh yeah,
fires the gun, and then his face gets blown up
yeah,
all in the same frame.
Right. And you
And
pan
you
back and forth, just
right,
in
right, right.
boom.
Like that conversational rhythm of the shots is still there, and and the gunshot just happens, and it feels like it's the movie constantly is breaking some sort of unwritten rule about violence, and it's like maybe you should signal it with a cut, you should signal it with you know when he kills the highest man up in the car, like it
Mhm.
cuts out to outside of the car, and then you see the
mm,
blood like spraying
yeah,
out of the window, right? That's sort of what I expected all the way through, but so much of the kills happen within
right,
the frame
Right.
yeah,
while the camera is just looking straight
Mhm.
ahead, and
yeah.
I don't know, I didn't expect it to be. I like violence in films, but I just didn't expect this
No, it's
much violence.
shocking. It
Like,
really
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Um,
nuts. I I mean, for me, this film, I mean, I guess King of Comedy too. It's in the very dignified category of great films, which is the films about how my country sucks and
True.
and how no one should live in it. But it's
How did this get passed by the Chinese government? I mean, I was also thinking about like censorship or like
Mm,
uh,
like I kind of feel like Zhao Zhangke is able to get around like censorship and is able to make a lot of like films that are very politically commentative without getting under fire from the Chinese government too much. So I don't know, just on like a logistical standpoint, I'm curious how he's able to do that.
I'm this is not sourced at all, but apparently Xi Jinping really likes these films. Think of
Oh,
that what you will. So
interesting.
yeah, but there are plenty of like American films that are critical of America, but I guess one could read them as like showing slivers of American society that are not living up to the American dream.
Mm,
Um, so while which is a reading that sort of maintains the sort of sanctity of the ideal of America as opposed to the reality of America. So I guess there's some sort of interpretive out there. And I think a big part of the Touch of Sin is like how modern China as is has not lived up to the promise of classlessness
right,
and
right. Yeah.
of communism. I'm thinking of the when all the women are dressed up in the garb of the People's
yeah.
Liberation Army and they're just
That's
sort of being paraded around for
creepy. Like the
yeah, yeah,
marching.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
really unsettling.
Yeah, they have like communist music blaring. They're wearing
Yeah.
communist military outfits, but it's for like for moneyed pleasure of the elite.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right, I
and
remember that.
all
Yeah,
yeah, and all these people, all these like oppressed people, like miners, um, receptionists, all these workers who've been, oppressed since time immemorial, in this seemingly um communist world have to recourse to like the most ancient forms of violence possible
yeah,
of wuxia violence, his stay at the temple and and they mete out this violence, but like unlike in wuxia films, like after Zhao Tao, the woman, like she does
Mm,
that
yeah,
amazing like
so good.
cut, but like
yeah,
for the rest of her segment, she's just trembling. Her hand is just trembling. She's
yeah,
all bloody. She doesn't know where to go. She just keeps wandering, and by the end, she just snitches on herself and says, I murdered somebody," you
yeah.
know? And it's and ultimately that violence doesn't have the kind of transcendence that is promised by the genre of
Mm,
martial arts. So they can't have anything. They can't have
Mhm.
any of the satisfaction of the ancient or the modern world.
right.
And
I
That's a
love
good
that.
point.
yeah, it's a very hopeless film, I think. But
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, seriously.
yeah.
Very bleak, very much a
I,
yeesh.
I was thinking, and I kind of wanted to get you guys' thoughts on this. Why is this film titled A Touch of Sin? Is it like,
Mm.
is it sin that's touched the characters that's in the film, or do you feel like it's talking about
Mhm.
characters committing a sin?
hmm,
Like are they the subject of sin,
Yeah.
or are they the object of like the world that's already filled with sin? I guess I'm kind of curious to hear like what you guys' take on, and why is it a touch, not like
Mhm.
a heap full of sin? So I think the title was really like just appropriately ambiguous enough for me
Mm.
to like wonder, yeah, maybe like what Zhao Zhangke meant by a touch of sin.
hmm,
Um, It's interesting. I was thinking about that too. I think my immediate thought as just a direct reading is that for me is that the violence committed is kind of in an absolute sense considered a sin, right? It's
Mm,
you're bringing harm, you're doing, it's like, yeah, in some absolute sense kind of a sin, but then in light of that, right? Or like what we kind of see, especially because a lot of these stories are modeled after like things that happened in different parts of China in real life. I feel like it's one of those like, well, let's inspect like the act that was committed. And if we dig further into it, we find that like, was it so sinful after all? Or like, was there some kind of justified reason for this? And I think it leaves that question open or kind of leaves you to consider how much of that violence warranted or justified or otherwise, but then ultimately still that like those people are now touched with sin maybe in some
Right.
way. The other thing that I looked up just right after I finished it is that apparently it's named after A Touch of Zen, which is like a
Hmm.
film by King Hu.
Mm,
I have not
oh,
seen that. I don't know anything about that or
uh-huh.
how those two might relate, but I did think that
Huh.
was interesting. I feel very, or even earlier, 70s.
Could see that,
Um,
yeah. Huh.
I would even like, yeah, I'm very interested in this too. I would maybe even watch this next.
Uh-huh.
Oh, you guys want to watch Touch of Zen?
Have you seen it?
I
Yeah.
it's so Touch of Zen is sort of what like that whole naming scheme is why my sort of reading is so sort of based around that lack of transcendence because Touch of
Mhm.
Zen in that film, like I don't want to spoil anything, but like there is a sense of transcendence that is like nearly unparalleled in the genre. That like a sense of transcendence that comes from like letting go of desire. Like it
Mm.
goes beyond just like martial arts at some point in that movie, where like the martial arts sort of happens, and then there, and then through some way they meet some Buddhist monks, and then it's sort of all about like overcoming sort of like the sort of cycles of violence in life, and
Mm.
it's like a genuine, yeah, I highly recommend it. Apparently like a Chinese title for A Touch of Sin, uh, Tianjuding is like
Oh yeah.
Chunjujang in Korean. It
Oh,
means,
yeah.
yeah, it means it's destiny, a fate that is set by heaven. Um,
Mm.
Chunjujang is also a Korean title for A Touch of Sin too.
oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess they both have like the same translation when you translate to Korean. But
Mhm. And
yeah.
yeah, and I think the English title was intentionally trying to go off of the Touch of Zen
Mm,
um, resonance, but and also the last line of the opera Zhao Tao is singing, and then the epilogue, and when the actor
Yeah.
asks like, "Do you understand your sin?" And
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, um, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
mhm,
No, I feel like I was thinking a lot about like just I think a lot of my like headspace in watching the film was like occupied by this question of like whose fault is it? Like
mhm,
who is at fault here for like the violence being committed or the characters to even get to a point where they have to commit the violence. Um and it's not as black and white where like you start playing the blame game, but I think I think you start thinking a lot about like the social milieus or context in which the characters have no other choice to
Mm-hmm.
commit these violence.
mhm,
Um, so I guess I was thinking a lot about just kind of like the pedigree of sin and how like
yeah,
sin does carry down um
Mm.
based on the social context and kind of the um the situation economic position status that these people are in.
mhm,
Um, and I don't know, like I guess in the film too, they Jean-Luc never says that hey, the characters that are committing these crimes are like bad people. It's really just yeah, this idea of like how did these characters even get to this point
Like
in the
how, yeah,
first
could this
place?
have even been avoided,
yeah,
or like
Right,
is this
right.
some kind of, yeah, by determined by God, like is this
Hmm.
what we were born into and ultimately doomed to
Yeah,
come out, right?
yeah.
mhm,
There's this kind of a very like just a sad hopelessness to like because I think because it's anthologized, you don't see the characters entering the situation.
Mhm.
You just start off right in like where their situation is. You don't
yeah,
have any,
yeah,
and I think as a viewer, you kind of like this subtext that it gives me is that like they had no other choice, but this is what their life is, and there's no
mhm,
other universe that they could entertain, kind of thing.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's very interestingly itself like a kind of communist auto commentary, right? If you want to go into like alienation from your labor and alienation from
Mm,
like the sweat of your labor or whatever.
right, right,
mhm,
right. Yeah. No, I really liked the film. I think it was really different. Like it felt different from like the other film that I watched by Zhang, which is Still Life, which kind of had
Mhm.
like magical realism element to it. I think this was like just really just like down and dirty, like dirty realism of like
Yeah,
day-to-day like life of people. Well, I guess not that's not yeah. And I think the stories were like loosely based on true events too,
Mhm.
right?
yeah.
But cool. Well, I do need to jump by 3 p.m. This is my time, so let's discuss this week's spotlight film. That is cool with everybody. Okay. What are some thoughts we have for this month in terms of watching movies?
Hmm.
I was I had a few that I potentially wanted to throw out.
Ooh,
Go
let's
for it.
go.
Um, so one was have you guys seen Paper Moon? That's by
No.
Peter Bogdanovich.
No.
I haven't seen any of his movies actually.
Me neither. But I think it's like a movie about I think I was just curious because I like haven't seen anything by Peter Bogdanovich.
Mhm.
But
We can go for it.
I'd be down. I'm very curious. Yeah.
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 I think it's a little bit it's like about it's kind of about like father and daughter like living through Great Depression era and
Mhm.
I thought it would be pretty interesting to watch it. I think it's kind of and I think just for me it'll just be a good addition in terms of my like understanding of film directors of like
Yeah,
watching.
into the repertoire.
Yeah, so if that's cool, I'll add Paper Moon.
Yeah, throw that on. I
For
like that.
sure.
Yeah, Bogdanovich. Okay. All right. What about anything from you guys?
Hmm. I'm just scrolling right now.
Yeah.
My list. Oh, um, I've been meaning to watch Videodrome forever. I don't know if people have seen that
I
or
feel
Um,
like Youngguang, haven't you seen it like
Youngong's probably
I'm
definitely seen
20
it as well.
times?
I'm always down to watch that movie.
Dude,
That movie
I
is so formative for me.
I really want to watch it because
It's
I
not that
really
I'm
the
terrified too. No, for
I'm
real. I
so
feel you.
terrible. I like the
I'm
I've
like, I'm so
yeah
squeamish, but
yeah
I'm like
I've
ready as well. I feel like
oh
too many people talk about it to me to not see it at some point.
It's not. I,
like I
I,
really want to watch it too actually.
mhm. Me personally, I thought Touch of Sin was scarier.
Really,
So yeah,
I think I can do it actually.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean it's like I've only dipped my toe into the Cronenberg world. I only watched A
Mhm.
History of Violence.
Mhm.
Um, so and I've just had like Videodrome, like scan is it like scanner, like like it's always been kind of on
Really
my
have
mind.
the I got the
Oh,
disc because it was a sale recently, and I
I,
haven't opened it. I've been like, "Ugh," but
I,
it's a nice box. Yeah.
I think Videodrome's one of those films where like I'll never watch if it's not on a spotlight film.
Yeah.
So
Right? Yeah. I'm not gonna
I
like
have
sit
to
down and
do
be like,
it.
oh yeah, we found
Yeah,
I mean, I guess
Videodrome.
we have to do it now. I mean,
yeah. All right, I'm all for.
All right.
Oh,
Sick. I'm sick.
dude. I think Criterion Collection Instagram actually. I remember they posted about Videodrome pretty recently
Mhm.
about I think it was like a post about Videodrome's first screening in Toronto Film Festival. And then um all the audience and then it was like a post about an audience reaction to the film and then one of the questions that they asked like test audience members were like what did you like about the film and then people are like nothing. Absolutely nothing. Something like that.
that's when you have a
uh,
heater in your hands.
That sounds great. My
all
kind
right.
of.
Okay, let's do then I think for spotlight film let's do Paper Moon and Videodrome.
Okay.
Um and then in terms of our next meeting,
Oh yeah, I'm traveling the back
mhm,
end of April next month.
okay.
Um, Starting on the 27th. So maybe the week before that would be the ideal if
I
that
was
works.
thinking that too. Maybe so my parents are coming the 21st. Can we do like the 20th, April 20th?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, that's
20th
good.
sounds great.
Yeah, my birthday is April 21st, so it'll be right before that.
Hey, I'm on
Mhm.
the
All right.
18th.
Oh wow, your April birthdays. Cool.
Sure.
Awesome.
And then is 7:30 p.m. Eastern time still good for people on that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, let me check my calendar really quick, but
Yeah,
that
yeah. Let me just gonna stop